I'm really curious how you do marketing campaigns and what you do for new sites, how you build them up, what you do for new companies, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in answer to that last question, it's different for every different company. And Snackbar Studio is going to be extremely different from Moz or SparkToro or anything I've done before, right? So Moz was very SEO and content flywheel, right? Like we produce content, we put it on our website, then we try and rank better for that content. Because we were in the SEO field, it made us look good when we ranked well in Google. And when people found us, they thought we were an authority. And then they came to the site and subscribed. And then they signed up for the free trial, blah, 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 blah. With SparkToro, I recognized that the zero click problem was such a huge issue. And I was trying to build something outside of the SEO space. And so we went heavily into really three things. One is press and PR, like trying to get the sources of influence that our audience already read and subscribed to cover us, to write about us, to talk about us favorably, getting speakers on stages at conferences to talk about us and show screenshots of what we were doing. The second one was social media marketing. So at the time, it was very heavily Twitter and LinkedIn, a little bit of YouTube and Reddit, a few other channels. Now that Twitter is mostly dead and mostly chatbots, it is a little more Threads, Blue Sky, LinkedIn mixed in there. And the third one is for sure like a content email play. So we have a very popular newsletter. I think about 40, 50,000 subscribers to that newsletter. Every time Amanda sends that out over the next like few days, you can see a spike in people forwarding that and coming to our website and signing up for the free and paid versions of the product. So those email newsletter subscriptions are just huge. And I still think email is a great channel. For Snackbar Studio, I've done almost no marketing. The only marketing I've done so far is about the company itself rather than the game. And that is intentional. So I did a big data-driven study about games. I actually did it with a couple of software engineering friends here in Seattle. We looked at, I think, about 80,000 games that have come out on Steam in the last 12, 15 years. And we basically looked at how well they performed. Many games, as you're probably aware, announce their sales. So the publisher will say, like, on their Twitter, on their Discord, or on YouTube, hey, we crossed 1 million sales. We crossed 50,000 sales. We sold 5,000 copies this game. We only sold 200 copies this game, whatever it is. And so we basically indexed those announcements, built up a huge repository of them, built a machine learning model to correlate announcements with metrics, publicly available metrics we could find, like the score that the game received from Metacritic, the rating on Steam, the number of reviews per week on average, all these kinds of metrics, and then built a regression model that had a nice correlation with actual sales. And then we modeled and looked at all the games that sort of fit particular paradigms and the tags and genres they were in. And that's what helped me select cooking, mid-century Italy for the setting, sort of chill action RPG as the style of the game, a bunch of different things about the structure of what the game was going to be. And then we looked at how marketing sort of affected these things. And the discovery was marketing more than a year before a game comes out is not just ineffective, it can work negatively against you. And that's because basically the people who would be most excited about the game, like it's in the perfect genre for them, it's like exactly the thing they want to see, they get tired of waiting. And then when the game comes out, they're like over it, right? They're like, oh man, that old thing, like whatever. So we have done no marketing for Snackbar, the video game itself, yet, because we're still about 2 years away from launch, we think, maybe 18 months. But that is going to happen. You're not going to see much of anything on the marketing front until between 9 and 12 months before the game comes out in early access. And then I'm happy to talk about like what I think is going to work in that sector, but I think that's probably less useful than having me back on in 2 years and I can tell you what did or didn't work.
I'm super interested in gaming. So me and my friends, we made the first video game in crypto. This was in 2018. We made Pokemon on the blockchain. It was really successful, and it was crazy. And I learned so much about the game industry. We had this amazing this amazing musician who did our OST. The OST is still on Spotify. It's like, yeah, it was so great. But I'm curious about your data-driven approach, because to me that's so cool. So aside from like don't start talking about it before 1 year, like before that, what were you learning about like different announcements and announcing games as well? Was it like a style of writing or words that worked, or phrases?
Yeah. So let's see. The generally most successful forms of marketing are when you show off, what would I call it? Unique features, especially visuals and things that sort of surprise people and attract them in emotional ways to not, I would say, not a game's, unfortunately, narrative or its sort of visuals outside of gameplay. Gamers, especially over the last like 4 or 5 years, have become extremely immunized to sexy trailers that don't actually show gameplay, and they really want to see what is it like to play the game.
GTA 6.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're one of these big studios and you have a giant title that already has millions of fans and 100 million people who are familiar with the game universe, the rules are different.
No,
Like,
no, but I'm
absolutely
saying
different.
to mirror, that was a big complaint of the recent trailer, was that they don't show gameplay.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fair complaint, but also that complaint exists because millions of people watch that trailer. If you're an indie studio with no history, you can't get millions of people to complain about your trailer. Like, nobody's even going to watch it. So the things that we've seen that are really successful are extremely short form video, visual content that shows gameplay, that is surprising, emotionally triggering. That emotion could be, for horror games, it's often like fear, surprise. For some narrative games, it's the text content and how interesting that can be. A recent game that did a really nice job with this is called Esoteric Ebb. They did a great job of showing off their like weird, unique writing and how it fit with a particular genre that's sort of popular in that space right now. You can see this with a little bit with the visual novel style games. And for games like ours, it's a lot of what games like Hades or Cult of the Lamb or those Nolita or even Vampire Survivor, whatever, like those type of games show off this sort of sexy, crazy, unique visual action in the gameplay itself. And that's what we've seen be successful. I also would recommend anybody who's deeply interested in this topic, check out a newsletter called Game Discover Co. from Simon Carless. I actually consulted with him a couple of years ago on the project that I'm talking about and on the game. I think his insights and his data on this is absolutely top notch.
How did you? By the way, Hades was excellent. That was my COVID game. That was like, I was sick with COVID. I just laid in bed playing Hades. How did you get the data to like figure out what works and what doesn't? And is this the type of thing that you can recreate for any brand?
Yes.
Was it very
and
manual,
no.
or
So
was it like, yeah?
it was a little manual, yeah. So I would say I think most of our data collection came from just Googling around for games. And we built an automated system that essentially, for each of the 80,000 titles or whatever, we filtered out the ones that basically had almost no reviews, which brought the list down to like 5,000 or something. And then for each of those, we did a Google search, not manually, but like an automated Google search for a variety of things. So that the name might be something like Hades game sales or Hades game sales announcement or that kind of thing. And then we would look for, hey, did the publisher announce the number of game sales on a particular date? Then we would record that in a database. here's the date, here's the game, here's the, ID, and here's the number of sales that they announced passed on a certain day. And then we would look at okay, how many reviews did they have on that day as a, leading up to that time, et cetera, et cetera. So it's buildable. Anybody can build it. The data is all public. It's on the internet or in Steam. Steam has a very nice API that you can call for this stuff. And it's very crawlable too. The application to other businesses and other sectors is quite challenging. But I would say one of the things that we use at SparkToro, right? SparkToro does exactly this. We try and look at people who visit this website also visit these websites, also listen to these podcasts, also subscribe to these subreddits, also listen to these, YouTube channels, podcasts, whatever. And those pieces of data come from clickstream data. Clickstream data is not, it's sort of technically public, but you have to buy it from a provider. We use Datos, which was bought by SEMrush a couple of years ago. And Datos essentially gives us a, clickstream for 10 million plus devices. So this is like, phones and desktops and laptops. And then every URL that is visited in a browser, they capture, they aggregate those, they anonymize it, they remove any PII, and then they essentially sell the aggregation. So they're not telling us, oh, Edward visited these websites. They're telling us, hey, here's, 10,000 people visited, or 10,000 people in the panel visited this site. And of those 10,000, 3,000 visited this site, and 2,000 visited this site, and 500 visited this site, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's essentially how we build our data set behind SparkToro. And it kind of works the same way of this game project that I was talking about, right? So like we're trying to figure out what's successful in games marketing, but SparkToro is trying to figure out what does an audience do who visits a particular site or who has a particular word in their profile, or any way you can describe an audience. We try and provide that same kind of data.
So for Snackbar, your main data, you were just getting it from Datos and from Steam?
Sorry, we didn't use Datos for the Snackbar project. We used Datos for SparkToro.
Okay. How are you crawling and getting all of that for Snackbar?
For Snackbar,
You
crawling.
just built a bot?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, just
That's
built
cool.
a bot. I think we used one of the APIs that crawls Google to get the automated Google searches. So there's like SERP API, SERPer, a few other ones. I think there's 5 or 6 different competitors in that space that crawl Google for you.
Were you only looking at the first announcements for each game, or were you looking at like a bunch of different announcements?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we had on average 5 or 6 announcements per game where we knew sales. Because if a game is using sales to sort of promote themselves, they usually do it many times, right? They'll be like, Assassin's Creed Mirage crossed 500,000, crossed 1 million, crossed 2 million, crossed 5 million, crossed 10 million. Like, Ubisoft likes to share those numbers because they create both demand in the market and also help their stock and make people excited about the company, that kind of thing.
And I think you said this. It was just Twitter that you were looking at for announcements. That was
No.
it was a bunch.
No, and announcements come from all over. We found a healthy number of announcements on Mastodon. It turns out there's a lot of indie game developers who like publish their stats on Mastodon.
What year was this? Was this before
this
Elon
was
bought?
beginning of last year.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, sure.
Maybe 2 years ago, actually.
Dude, I gotta say that is your approach to like figuring out what works with games, and that is so brilliant. That's why you're my favorite. That's like, no, for real. Like,
I mean, but this is like my playbook, right? Like I like to make big data studies and then like look at correlations, and I don't know. Opinions are fine. Like I don't have any problem with opinions. And there's people who are more successful than me who are fully opinion based. Like they don't use data, but I just like to have the numbers, right? To be able to prove to myself like, hey, before I make a judgment, let me make sure that it's backed up by something.